Okay, here are some practical and decorative finishes to your splices. And we'd shown some eye splices and long splices and that kind of thing earlier, and had sort of just left them fairly rough. So we'll spend a bit of time looking at. I guess we'll start off with a double wall and crown knot, which will make a nice ball here, a nice lump, and then you continue your splicing down, and we'll finish with a whipping. So what we've got here is the same sort of thimble that we'd used before. It's basically just an eye splicer on a thimble. I've got a constrictor hitch holding it tight, and I've started the splice. I just have one full tuck in for each strand, and we're basically ready to continue splicing down. So if we were just going to do just a plain old splice, we just continue with the weaving over and under for each strand until you've got at least 5. And if this were for an anchor or something, I'd probably put 7 in here before terminating it by cutting the ends off and splicing and whipping. But we'll do this a little bit more decoratively. So we'll do a double wall and crown here first. So we've got one tuck in. We'll have a double wall and crown, making a nice knot here, and then we'll continue splicing down. The number of tucks that you count should still be 7. So we've got 1. The knot really doesn't count for anything, and we'll want 6 more if this is for an anchor, or 4 more to make a total of 5 if it's just for general use. So here's how you start your wall and crown knot. A wall knot is basically the opposite of a crown. We've done a crown before, where each strand goes over top of its neighbor and points downwards. This is the opposite. Each strand is going to go under its neighbor and is going to wind up pointing upwards. So I find it's easier just to hold it in my hand here. We'll start with the black strand. You can start, of course, with any of them. It goes under its neighbor and is going to wind up pointing upwards. Its neighbor is going to come along underneath the next one and is going to wind up pointing upwards. And the last strand is going to come underneath its neighbor, which is the black one, and point upwards. And from here, sort of work them together. And we're going to leave them a little bit loose here because we're going to eventually be doubling this and having more strands pass through. So we'll leave it a little bit loose. But you can see how each one is interconnected with its neighbor. And the strands are finishing basically in an upwards direction. So that's our wall knot. So the next step from here is to put a crown knot in. So I guess we've got the red one handy. We'll start with that. It doesn't matter at all which one you start with. It's going to go over top of its neighbor and be pointing downwards. So the white one here will go over top of its neighbor here and is going to be pointing downwards. And the black one is going to go over top of its neighbor, which is the red one, and pointing downwards. And once again, just working them together. Not going to be tightening them here because I want to be able to double them up without having a major fight on my hands. So loosely formed, this is what it looks like. So we have a single wall and crown knot here. Okay. And you'll see each strand is exiting the knot essentially right where it began. So the red is coming out right alongside the red one. And to double this up, all we've got to do, now that we've got the single wall and crown formed, is to follow itself. So the red is going to follow the red one around. If it's on top, and in this case all of these strands will be on top of the original piece, keep it on top as it goes around so that we don't cross over. Keep it still above the original. So we can try to sort of worm this through, but a lot easier method of doing this is to take your Swedish fid, put it inside, making sure you don't snag any fibers, and you'll see this opens things up nicely. You can easily put this through and remove the fid. So we'll continue following this along, and you can see at this point here we're doubling this red one. It's already doubled on this side, and so this tells us that it's ready to go down and exit through the knot. And so what we're going to do is put the fid down the center. Once again, trying not to snag anything. Be a little bit careful as you do this. Down the center and exit through the knot, through the center of the knot. Put the strand in there. If it doesn't quite fit, push the fid in a little deeper. Out it comes. We can extract the fid, and there's the first doubler. You'll notice that as it comes through the center of the knot, it lays right against the main part of the rope. So now we're ready to go on to the next strand. So we'll do the black one next. Of course, it's above its original pass. We'll do the same thing. Just follow it along. Since it starts above, we'll keep it above the whole time. And as it comes through, give it a little twist just to maintain the shape of the rope. Follow it along, and once again you can see we're passing from a singled into it's already doubled here. So that's our cue to head down the center and exit the knot. And there we go. So that's two taken care of, and we just have the white one remaining. This looks loose enough that I can get it through without needing the fid. Pass it through, and following it along. And once again we're going from the single to the double, so that's where we'll exit. Let's try this again. There we go. Okay, so now we've got a double wall and crown knot. Now, of course, it's rather loose, which we did on purpose to make it easy to pass these strands through. At this point, what you would do is go back to where the knot begins and follow each strand around, giving it a tug and snugging everything up. And you'll find that will, of course, lengthen these ends out for you as well. So that would be the next step. And once we do that, and we'll take a break for a second while I do that. It takes a few minutes of fiddling to work it tight. But the next step from here is basically continue splicing just as you had. So, for example, here we'd pass this guy through here. Red guy would go through there. And I'm not going to cover the splicing in any great detail because we've done quite a few of them in earlier parts of the video. But that's how we get started splicing again, and then just continue the pattern on down. So like I said, if this is more of a decorative thing, then really only 5 are necessary. We've got one up at the throat here. This is the second one, and 3 more will give us 5, and then we can terminate it. So we'll take a quick break while I finish this off to the point where we would start our whipping, and then we'll come back to the video. Okay, we're back continuing with our double wall and crown knot. So we've got our eye splice here, 1 tuck, then a double wall and crown, which I've worked up, and it's quite solid now. Worked it up nice and tight. Continued splicing along. Put another 4 tucks through here, which makes 5. We've got the one up top, and 4 more, and we're basically ready to whip. Actually, with the way this is, the rope's been colored, you can really see how the over-under pattern works, and the splice actually kind of spirals itself around the rope, and that's really what gives it
its strength. Plus, when you pull on the line here, you can see all of these compress, and the rope actually squeezes in on itself and makes things nice and strong. Okay, so we'll finish by applying a whipping here so that things can't unravel, and then trim the ends.